My name is Margaret Hayes, and for 3 years I lived a nightmare that my own son never knew existed. I was tortured in my own home by the woman he loved, the woman he married, the woman who smiled sweetly in his presence, and became a completely different person the moment he left the room. This is the story of how I survived, how the truth finally came to light, and how justice found its way to someone who thought she was untouchable. It started the day my son Daniel brought Clarissa home to meet me. He was 32 years old, successful, kind-hearted, and I had been praying for years that he would find someone special. When he called to tell me he had met the woman of his dreams, I cried tears of joy. My son deserved happiness after dedicating so much of his life to building his career as a software engineer. Clarissa walked into my home on that first meeting like she owned the place. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Tall, elegant, with perfectly styled dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. She hugged me warmly, complimented my home, and told me how much she had heard about me from Daniel. "Mrs. Hayes," she said in a voice like honey, "Daniel talks about you constantly. He's such a mama's boy, but I think that's wonderful. It shows he knows how to respect and love women." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. I didn't hear the subtle mockery underneath. I didn't catch the way her eyes went cold when Daniel wasn't looking directly at her. I was just a mother, grateful that my son had found someone who seemed to appreciate our close relationship. They were married 6 months later in a beautiful ceremony that cost nearly $60,000. Daniel paid for most of it, though Clarissa's parents contributed as well. I sat in the front row, watching my only child marry this woman, and I felt nothing but happiness. If I had known what was coming, I would have stood up and objected right there at the altar. The problem started almost immediately after the honeymoon. Daniel and Clarissa moved into a house just 15 minutes from mine. Daniel had specifically chosen the location so he could visit me regularly. I had been widowed for 8 years by then, living alone in the home where I had raised Daniel. He worried about me, called me every day, visited at least 3 times a week. Clarissa hated it from the beginning, but she was clever enough not to show it openly. Instead, she began a campaign so subtle and so insidious that it took me months to even realize what was happening. It started with small comments when Daniel wasn't around. "Oh, Margaret, you really shouldn't wear that color. It makes you look so old." Or, "Did you forget to brush your hair today? You look a bit disheveled." Little cuts disguised as concern, designed to chip away at my confidence. Then came the boundary violations. Clarissa had a key to my house because Daniel had given her one. She started showing up unannounced, letting herself in without knocking. I would be in my robe having morning coffee, and suddenly she would be standing in my kitchen, looking at me with thinly veiled disgust. "Margaret, decent people don't lounge around in their pajamas until noon. What if someone important stopped by? It's 8:30 in the morning, Clarissa, and this is my home. Still, standards are standards. No wonder Daniel worries about you living alone. You're letting yourself go." The comments escalated. She criticized my cooking, my housekeeping, my appearance, my hobbies. Every single thing about me became a target for her subtle cruelty. But she was always careful, always making sure Daniel never witnessed any of it. When Daniel was present, Clarissa transformed into the perfect daughter-in-law. She would hug me, compliment my cooking, offer to help with chores. She performed affection so convincingly that Daniel never suspected anything was wrong. And when I tried to hint that something was off, that Clarissa wasn't as kind to me when he wasn't around, he dismissed my concerns. "Mom, you're just not used to having another woman in my life. Clarissa loves you. She tells me all the time how grateful she is to have you as a mother-in-law. Maybe you're being a little oversensitive?" The gaslighting was masterful. Clarissa would do something cruel. I would react, and then she would twist the narrative to make me seem like the problem. She once threw away a quilt I had been working on for months, telling Daniel I had given it to her as a gift. When I protested, she acted hurt and confused. I thought Margaret wanted me to have it. She said it would look perfect in our guest room. "Daniel, I'm so sorry if I misunderstood. Maybe her memory isn't what it used to be." And just like that, I became the forgetful old woman who couldn't keep her stories straight. Daniel looked at me with concern, not suspicion of his wife, but worry about my cognitive health. 6 months into their marriage, Daniel announced that they were going to have a baby. I was overjoyed, imagining being a grandmother, having a little one to love and spoil. Clarissa smiled when Daniel told me the news, but the moment he went to get champagne from the kitchen, she leaned close to me and whispered, "This baby changes everything, Margaret. Daniel will be focused on our family now. You're going to have to learn to take a back seat. Your time as the most important woman in his life is over." The pregnancy made Clarissa's cruelty worse, not better. She used her condition as an excuse to monopolize Daniel's time and attention. Suddenly, he couldn't visit me as often because Clarissa needed him. She had morning sickness, pregnancy complications, anxiety. Every week brought a new crisis that kept Daniel close to home. When he did visit, Clarissa always came with him. She never let us have time alone together. And she continued her performance, playing the devoted wife who was suffering through a difficult pregnancy, while I sat there knowing the truth, but unable to speak it. I tried once. I called Daniel and asked him to come alone because I needed to talk to him about something important. He agreed, but when he arrived, Clarissa was with him. "I hope you don't mind, Mom." Clarissa wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to leave her alone. Clarissa sat there with a weak smile, her hand on her pregnant belly, looking fragile and pitiful. How could I tell my son that his pregnant wife was systematically emotionally abusing me? I would sound insane, jealous, like the bitter mother-in-law from every bad sitcom, so I said nothing again. The baby was born on a cold November morning, a beautiful little girl they named Emma. I was at the hospital, waiting to meet my granddaughter, when Clarissa's mask slipped in a way that should have alerted everyone around us. A nurse brought Emma to me so I could hold her while Clarissa rested. I sat there with this tiny, perfect human in my arms, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed with love. And then Clarissa's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Don't get too comfortable, Margaret. She's not your baby. Give her back." The nurse looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, grandmothers are allowed to hold the babies. It's encouraged for bonding. I don't care what's encouraged. I want my daughter back. Now." Daniel, who had stepped out to make phone calls, missed the entire exchange. When he came back, Clarissa was all smiles again, and I was sitting alone in the corner, having given Emma back to avoid causing a scene. Over the next year, Clarissa used Emma as a weapon against me. She would cancel visits at the last minute, claiming Emma was sick or fussy. She would schedule important baby milestones on days when she knew I couldn't attend. Emma's first smile, first time sitting up, first solid foods. I missed all of them because Clarissa made sure I wasn't there. When I did get to visit, Clarissa supervised every interaction. She would hover over me while I held Emma, criticizing everything. "You're holding her wrong. Don't talk to her in that voice. She doesn't like being bounced that way." It got to the point where I was so anxious during visits that I could barely enjoy my own granddaughter. Daniel noticed nothing. He was working long hours, exhausted from new parenthood, and completely blind to his wife's manipulation. Clarissa made sure he only saw her at her best and me at my worst. The breaking point came on Emma's first birthday. Daniel called me excited, saying they were throwing a big party and of course I would be there. I bought Emma a beautiful dress and a stuffed animal I had been saving for this occasion. I arrived at their house an hour before the party was supposed to start, wanting to help set up. Clarissa opened the door with a look of pure hatred. "What are you doing here?" "Daniel invited me. It's Emma's birthday party." "The party was yesterday, Margaret. Did you forget? Or are you really so desperate for attention that you're crashing a toddler's birthday party?" I felt my blood run cold. Daniel had specifically told me the party was today, September 15th. I had it marked on my calendar. I had confirmation texts from him. That's not true. Daniel told me today. Clarissa pulled out her phone and showed me a group text where Daniel had told everyone the party was on the 14th. But I had never been included in that text. She had created a separate message just for me with the wrong date. "You're losing it, Margaret. This is getting concerning. Maybe you need to see a doctor about your memory issues." She closed the door in my face. I stood there on the porch, holding my gifts, fighting back tears. I got in my car and drove home, and I spent the rest of that day crying harder than I had cried since my husband died. That night, Daniel called. "Mom, where were you? We waited for you at Emma's party." Through tears, I explained what had happened. But Clarissa had already poisoned the well. She had told Daniel I seemed confused lately, that she was worried about my cognitive health, that I had been making strange comments and forgetting conversations. "Mom, maybe you should see a doctor. Early dementia can be treated if we catch it soon enough. I'm not saying that's what this is, but the missed party, the confusion about conversations, the forgetfulness. I'm worried about you. I'm not losing my mind, Daniel. I'm telling you the truth." But even to my own ears, I sounded desperate and unhinged. Clarissa had set the trap perfectly, and I had walked right into it. Over the next year, Clarissa's abuse escalated to levels I never thought possible. She started coming to my house when Daniel was at work, letting herself in with her key. She would go through my things, rearrange my furniture, throw away items that were important to me. When I protested, she would deny it ever happened. "I never moved your chair, Margaret. Are you sure you didn't do it yourself and forget?" She would call me late at night, letting the phone ring and ring until I answered, and then she would just breathe into the receiver before hanging up. It happened so frequently that I stopped sleeping properly, always waiting for the next call. She told Daniel I was calling her at all hours, harassing her. When he checked his phone records, the calls were there. My number calling theirs at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. But I wasn't making those calls. Later, I would discover Clarissa had cloned my phone number using software she purchased online. She was calling herself from a spoofed number that looked exactly like mine. The stress was destroying me. I lost weight. I stopped seeing friends because I was too ashamed to admit what was happening. Who would believe me? A successful young professional woman, a new mother, was secretly terrorizing her elderly mother-in-law? It sounded absurd. I started keeping a journal, documenting every incident. The dates, the times, what Clarissa said or did, whether Daniel was present. I took screenshots of text messages. I started recording conversations on my phone whenever Clarissa was around. I didn't know what I would do with this evidence, but I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Daniel's younger brother, my nephew Mark, who lived across the country. He came to visit for Thanksgiving, and he stayed with me instead of with Daniel and Clarissa. Clarissa had made it clear his presence in her home was unwelcome. Witnessed things that Daniel had never seen. He was there when Clarissa showed up unannounced and let herself in without knocking. He heard her speak to me with barely concealed contempt. He watched her facial expression change completely when her phone rang and Daniel was on the other end. After she left, Mark sat me down. "Aunt Margaret, what the hell was that? That woman just spoke to you like you were garbage." The dam broke. I told Mark everything. 3 years of abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, isolation. I showed him my journal with its hundreds of documented incidents. I played him the audio recordings where Clarissa's voice dripped with venom. I showed him the text messages where she threatened me, always careful to delete them before Daniel could see. Mark was horrified. "We have to tell Daniel. Right now. He won't believe me, Mark. She's done too good a job of making me look unreliable. She's told him I'm losing my memory, that I'm confused and forgetful. If I accuse her now, I'll just confirm everything she's said about me. Then we gather more evidence, better evidence. Evidence even Daniel can't deny." Mark stayed for another week, helping me install hidden cameras in my house. We put them in the living room, kitchen, and hallway. They were tiny, motion-activated, and they uploaded footage directly to a cloud storage that only Mark and I could access. We didn't have to wait long. 2 days after Mark left, Clarissa showed up at my house. I was in the kitchen when I heard the door open. She walked in like she owned the place, went directly to the living room, and started going through drawers in my desk. The camera caught everything. Her rifling through my personal papers. Her taking mail that had come for me. Her going upstairs to my bedroom and going through my closet. She took jewelry that had belonged to my mother. She took cash from a drawer in my nightstand. She stood in front of a photo of Daniel and me taken when he was 5 years old, and she tore it in half, leaving the pieces on the floor. Then she saw my journal, the one where I had been documenting her abuse. She read through it, her face contorting with rage. And then she took it. She walked out of my house with my journal, my jewelry, my mail, and my peace of mind. But we had it all on video, every single second. Mark wanted to send the footage to Daniel immediately, but I stopped him. It's not enough. She'll say I provoked her somehow, or that I gave her permission, or that the video is edited. We need something more conclusive. We need her to confess. Mark had an idea. He was a tech consultant, and he knew people who specialized in surveillance equipment. He came back to my house and installed a small recording device that looked like a regular button on my cardigan. It would record both audio and video whenever I turned it on. The opportunity came a week later. Daniel called to say he was going out of town for a business conference. He would be gone for 4 days. He asked if I could stay with Clarissa and Emma, help out with the baby while he was away. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but I agreed. This might be our only chance to get the evidence we needed. I wore the button camera every day I was there, and Clarissa, feeling free without Daniel's presence, revealed her true self completely. On the first night after Emma was asleep, Clarissa poured herself a glass of wine and looked at me with undisguised loathing. You know, Margaret, I've been very patient with you. Most women in my position would have convinced their husbands to cut off their meddling mothers entirely. But I've let you stick around. Do you know why? She didn't wait for me to answer. Because watching you suffer is entertaining. Watching you try to tell Daniel what I'm really like. And having him dismiss you. Having him think you're losing your mind. That's better than just getting rid of you. You're like a little pet project for me. The camera was recording every word. I forced myself to stay calm. To ask questions that would make her elaborate. Why do you hate me so much, Clarissa? What did I ever do to you? She laughed. You didn't do anything. I just don't like you. I don't like weak people, and you're weak. You let me walk all over you for 3 years because you were too scared to fight back. You let me isolate you from your own son. You're pathetic. Over the next 3 days, Clarissa admitted to everything. The phone cloning, the doctored text messages, throwing away my belongings, stealing my jewelry. She bragged about how easy it was to manipulate Daniel, how he believed everything she told him because he loved her. She even admitted to something I hadn't known about. She had been stealing money from my bank account. She had gotten my account information from mail she took from my house, and she had been making small withdrawals that I hadn't noticed. Over 2 years, she had stolen nearly $12,000 from me, but the most damning confession came on the last night of Daniel's trip. Clarissa had been drinking more than usual, and her guard was completely down. You want to know a secret, Margaret? Daniel wants to put you in a nursing home. He's been researching facilities. He thinks you can't take care of yourself anymore, that you're becoming a danger to yourself with your memory problems and confusion. She leaned in close, her breath reeking of wine. And I'm going to make sure it happens. Once you're locked away in some depressing facility, Emma will never have to see you again. She won't even remember you, and I'll have Daniel all to myself. No more guilt trips about visiting his poor lonely mother. I kept my composure until I was back in the guest room with the door locked. Then I transferred all the footage from the button camera to Mark's secure server. We had everything. Multiple hours of video and audio of Clarissa admitting to financial theft, emotional abuse, stalking, harassment, and conspiracy to have me institutionalized under false pretenses. When Daniel came home from his business trip, I asked him to come to my house alone for dinner. To my surprise, he agreed. Maybe Clarissa thought she had finally won, and there was no more threat from me. Maybe she was just confident that Daniel would never believe anything I said. Daniel arrived at 6 o'clock, and I had Mark join us via video call. Daniel looked confused. Mom, what's this about? Why is Mark on the call? Son, I need you to watch something, and I need you to watch all of it before you say anything. Can you do that for me? He nodded, though he looked wary. I played the footage, all of it. The videos of Clarissa breaking into my house and stealing, the recordings of her admitting to the phone cloning, the financial theft, the systematic campaign of abuse, her confession that she was trying to have me institutionalized, her mocking laughter as she described manipulating him. The color drained from Daniel's face. He watched in complete silence, and I watched him. I saw the exact moment his perception shattered, the moment he realized his wife wasn't who he thought she was. The moment he understood that his mother had been telling the truth all along. When the final video finished, Daniel sat there for a full minute without speaking. Then he looked at me with tears streaming down his face. Mom, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. You tried to tell me. You tried to make me see. And I didn't believe you. I chose her over you. I thought you were losing your mind. And all this time, she was. The recording stopped. He didn't say anything else because he got up and left immediately, driving straight to his house to confront Clarissa. Mark and I followed in my car, afraid of what might happen. We arrived to find Daniel standing in his living room with Emma in his arms and Clarissa packing a suitcase. She looked up when I walked in, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Daniel's voice was cold and controlled. Clarissa has agreed to leave the house tonight. She'll be staying in a hotel while we figure out the divorce proceedings. She is not to contact my mother in any way. She is not to come to my mother's house. If she violates these terms, I will immediately file for a restraining order and press charges for the theft and harassment. Clarissa looked at me with pure venom. You think you've won. You think destroying my marriage makes you the victor here. But Daniel will resent you for this. Every time he looks at you, he'll remember that you're the reason his daughter is growing up in a broken home. No, Daniel said firmly, you're the reason. Every lie you told. Every manipulation. Every cruel thing you did to my mother. That's on you, not on her. She was trying to protect herself from you. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. Clarissa fought for everything, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. She had stolen from me, committed fraud by cloning my phone, and engaged in a sustained campaign of harassment and emotional abuse. Her lawyer advised her to settle quickly before criminal charges were filed. Daniel got primary custody of Emma, with Clarissa receiving supervised visitation every other weekend. The supervision was mandated by the court after a psychological evaluation revealed concerning patterns of manipulation and deceit in her personality profile. Daniel suspects she has narcissistic personality disorder, though she was never officially diagnosed because she refused to continue with the evaluation process. The financial part of the settlement took longer. Clarissa had to repay the $12,000 she stole from me, plus interest. She also had to return the jewelry, though some pieces were never recovered. She claimed she had sold them, but I suspect she kept them out of spite. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle, it was rebuilding my relationship with Daniel. He was consumed with guilt, replaying every moment from the past 3 years, where he had dismissed my concerns, or made me feel like I was being unreasonable. He apologized so many times that I finally had to tell him to stop. Daniel, you loved your wife, you trusted her. That's what people are supposed to do in marriage. She took advantage of that trust. This isn't your fault. But I should have seen it, Mom. I should have known something was wrong. She was very good at hiding it. That's what people like Clarissa do. They're masters of deception. She fooled everyone, not just you. It took time, but slowly we healed. Daniel and Emma moved in with me for 6 months, while he processed the divorce, and figured out his new life as a single father. I got to be the grandmother I had always wanted to be, spending time with Emma, watching her grow, being part of her daily life without Clarissa's interference. Emma is 4 years old now. She has vague memories of when her parents lived together, but mostly she knows her current life. She lives with her daddy and visits her mommy sometimes. And she knows that Grammy's house is a safe place where she's loved unconditionally. Daniel eventually started dating again. He's incredibly cautious now, hyper-aware of red flags, probably to an unhealthy degree. He's in therapy working through the trauma of discovering that the woman he married was capable of such sustained cruelty. His therapist tells him it's a form of PTSD, and he's learning to trust his judgment again. As for me, I'm 71 years old now, and I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. I survived 3 years of psychological warfare. I documented my abuse when everyone told me I was imagining things. I trusted my perception of reality even when the person closest to me thought I was losing my mind, and I got justice. Clarissa tried to destroy me, and she failed. She's a divorced single mother working a retail job to make ends meet, because she lost her alimony in the settlement due to her documented abuse. Her parents disowned her after learning the truth about what she did. Her friends abandoned her. She lost everything she tried to steal from me. Sometimes I wonder if she feels any remorse, if she lies awake at night thinking about the damage she caused, the relationships she destroyed, the trust she violated. But I don't think people like Clarissa work that way. I think she probably still believes she's the victim, that I somehow orchestrated her downfall, that Daniel was too weak to stand by his wife. The experience taught me important lessons about the nature of abuse. It's not always physical violence or screaming arguments. Sometimes it's quiet and insidious. It's someone systematically dismantling your reality, making you doubt your own perceptions, isolating you from support systems. It's death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to seem insignificant, but together they're devastating. I also learned that it's never too late to fight back. I was 68 years old when this started. I was a widow, living alone, with no real power or resources compared to a young married couple. Every disadvantage was stacked against me, but I survived because I refused to stop believing in my own truth. To anyone out there experiencing something similar, whether it's a daughter-in-law, son-in-law, or any family member who makes you feel crazy, who undermines you in subtle ways, who turns your loved ones against you, I want you to know that you're not imagining it. Trust your instincts, document everything, find allies who believe you, and never ever stop fighting for your truth. There were so many times I wanted to give up. Times when it felt easier to just accept that maybe I was the problem, maybe I was losing my memory, maybe I was too sensitive or demanding or difficult. It would have been simpler to just fade into the background and accept whatever crumbs of relationship Clarissa was willing to allow me. But I didn't. And because I didn't, I now have a real relationship with my son and granddaughter. I have my dignity, I have justice, and I have proof that standing up for yourself is always worth it, even when it feels impossible. Mark, who helped me through all of this, later told me that watching me fight back inspired him to address his own issues with toxic family members. He said seeing a 70-year-old woman install surveillance cameras and gather evidence like a private investigator showed him that age is no barrier to self-advocacy. The story spread through our community, though I never sought publicity. Word got out about what Clarissa had done, and suddenly I was hearing from other people who had experienced similar situations. Mothers-in-law who were being slowly pushed out of their sons' lives. Fathers who were being alienated from daughters. The pattern was always the same. A manipulative partner, a loyal but oblivious spouse, and a victim who everyone thought was exaggerating or being difficult. I started a small support group that meets at the community center once a month. We call it the Gray Warriors, and we're all older adults dealing with family manipulation and alienation. We share strategies, offer emotional support, and sometimes we help each other gather evidence. 3 members of our group have successfully exposed abusive family members using techniques we discussed. 2 others decided to distance themselves from toxic situations rather than fight. Both choices are valid. What I want people to understand is that this type of abuse is real, it's devastating, and it's more common than anyone wants to admit. We live in a society that romanticizes family relationships and assumes that everyone has good intentions. We're taught to give people the benefit of the doubt, to assume miscommunications rather than malice, to preserve family harmony at all costs. But sometimes people are actually malicious. Sometimes they really are trying to hurt you, and recognizing that isn't being paranoid or oversensitive. It's being realistic about human nature. Clarissa taught me that some people are simply empty inside. They don't experience empathy or genuine connection. Other people are just resources to them, tools to be used for their own benefit. When you stop being useful, or when you become an obstacle to what they want, they will try to eliminate you without a second thought. Daniel struggles with this realization. He tells me sometimes that he lies awake wondering if Clarissa ever really loved him, or if he was just a mark from the beginning. A successful man with a good income and a close family that she could exploit. Did she ever feel genuine affection for him, or was it always an act? I tell him that it doesn't matter. Whether she loved him or not, her actions were unforgivable. Love doesn't excuse abuse. It doesn't justify what she did to me or to our family, and dwelling on what was real and what was performance will only drive him crazy. Emma asks about her mother sometimes. She's too young to understand the full story, but she knows that Mommy did some bad things, and that's why she doesn't live with them anymore. Daniel and I agreed we would never badmouth Clarissa to Emma. We would let Emma form her own opinions as she gets older, and when she's ready, we'll tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. But Emma is perceptive, even at 4. She once said to me, "Grammy, I like when you're happy. You smile more now than you did before." I realized that even as a toddler, Emma had picked up on my distress, on the tension that existed in our family. Children always know when something is wrong, even if they can't articulate what it is. Now our household is peaceful. Daniel works from home 2 days a week so he can spend more time with Emma. I come over for dinner 3 times a week, and they come to my house on weekends. We have family game nights and movie marathons. We take Emma to the park and the zoo and the children's museum. We're building the relationship that Clarissa tried to prevent, and it's beautiful. I look back on those 3 years of abuse, and I can see now how close I came to losing everything. If Mark hadn't visited when he did, if I hadn't started documenting the abuse, if I hadn't installed those cameras, I would probably be in a nursing home right now. Clarissa would have succeeded in convincing Daniel that I was mentally incompetent. She would have taken control of my life and possibly my assets. That's the goal of this type of abuser. Total control, total isolation, complete destruction of the victim's autonomy and relationships. And they're often successful because their victims are too ashamed to speak up, too afraid of not being believed, too conditioned to put family harmony above their own well-being. I refuse to be ashamed anymore. I survived psychological warfare. I fought back against someone who thought I was too old and too weak to defend myself. And I won, not just in court but in life. I have my family back, I have my peace. I have my truth validated and acknowledged. To my fellow survivors, the ones who are still fighting, the ones who are just beginning to recognize what's happening to them, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your reality is valid, your pain is real, and you deserve to be believed and protected and free from abuse. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Find your allies, and never stop fighting for your right to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what anyone tells you about your age or your memory or your sensitivity. You are stronger than your abuser thinks you are, and you deserve justice. My name is Margaret Hayes. I am a survivor, and I am living proof that it's never too late to reclaim your life from someone who tried to steal it from you. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Abuse against elderly family members is an epidemic that thrives in silence. The more we talk about it, the more we expose these patterns, the harder it becomes for abusers to operate in the shadows. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences or thoughts. Join the conversation. Help break the silence that allows this abuse to continue. And if you know someone who might be experiencing this type of manipulation, reach out to them. Let them know you believe them. That simple act of validation can be the lifeline they need to start fighting back. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, justice, and the power of refusing to be silenced. Together, we can create a world where no one has to suffer in silence, where abuse is recognized and stopped, where families are built on genuine love rather than manipulation and control. With strength and solidarity to everyone fighting the good fight, this is Margaret Hayes, reminding you that you are never too old, never too powerless, never too alone to stand up for your truth. Thank you for listening to my story. May it give you courage for your own battles, whatever they may be.